Hello and welcome to the Too Much Apparently podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast for the deeply feeling, overthinking, emotionally overloaded humans who've been told they're too much apparently. And if you're back, thanks for choosing to sit with us again.
We're Alice and Carly, two therapists who are also just sensitive weirdos trying to make sense of life, healing, and our own brains. This isn't a professional advice podcast. It's more like the messy, honest conversations that happen when you finally feel safe enough to say what you're really thinking.
This space is for people like us, the ones who've been called too sensitive, too serious, too emotional, too intense, and have spent way too long believing that it's true.
Okay, on with the episode.
Today we're talking about being too intentional to rush, when the world tells you to hustle harder, grow faster, and optimize every second, and some part of you just refuses.
That mix of guilt and clarity. You're not lazy, you're not falling behind, you've just looked up and thought, wait, what am I actually rushing towards?
We're going to talk about the pressure to do more, be more, and produce more, and why slowing down isn't giving up. It's sometimes the bravest, most defiant thing you can do.
And the emotional stuff underneath it. Because for a lot of us, the hustle isn't just cultural, it's personal. It's about worth, it's about fear.
So if you've ever felt guilty for doing nothing, anxious when you're not being productive, or resentful of a world that won't let you just be, this one's for you.
Let's get into it. We're talking about hustle culture. I mean, you know my feelings. I'm so anti-hustle.
Same. Just the words make me want to run out of the room.
I know. I feel hustle now just makes me feel like a bit ick. It's the same as girl boss.
Yeah. I'm a bit mixed on girl boss. I think I actually have a secret part of me that's like, yeah, girl boss.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But other times I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, hustle culture, no, I'm just not here for it. It's just not me.
No, me neither. But it's not always been that case. I've definitely found myself many times getting caught up in the girl boss stuff, in the hustle culture stuff.
Yeah. I think it almost feels like there isn't any other option. Like hustle culture is the way. Go hard or go home. Or else what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, I guess, this episode is bringing up a few different thoughts in terms of hustle culture in the sense of career and business and how many hours you dedicate to this idea of success and growth and where you might want to get to. And then I think about just hustling in life, that chronic sense of urgency, how busy everybody is, how much people just rush around through their life and the impact of that.
Yeah. I think for me, it is mainly around work and career, because I think most of the messages that I've received have been about that is what is important. But I was also thinking about just wanting to separate out a little bit the difference between hustle culture, work ethic, and also something around privilege. You know, I'm aware that as we go into this episode and think about how we might do things differently, that not everybody has the privilege to be able to do that. You know, some people are working 3 jobs just to survive and there is no option to slow down, and just wanted to acknowledge that, being able to slow down involves privilege. Yeah. And also that it's not the same thing as having a strong work ethic. I think it's possible to have a strong work ethic and still live intentionally and practice slow living and not get caught up in the hustle. To me, hustle represents something quite specific, which I think is very much based in capitalism, which is very money driven. Like that is the one marker of success, is earning as much money as possible. Maybe with some other things in there, kind of, status, job titles, things like that. But for me, hustle culture is very much money driven.
Yeah. And as well, just as you were talking, there's certain types of people who don't want to live a slow life. And also that's fine. Different personalities suit different things. But for those of us with more sensitive nervous systems, so often we're pulled into the way that the world works. You know, the world metaphorically spins around quite fast. And we're pulled along with that. We're expected to keep pace with everybody else. And so it's something that I actually believe in as a concept, the idea of slow living, of intentional living, certain degrees of like minimalism when it comes to the way in which we live life. That is something that I personally really value, but also believe in as something that can be really beneficial for certain types of nervous systems. And you are right, there is a certain level of privilege that can come with that. But there's also something that feels different to me in terms of like the practicalities of it, like physically slowing down in life. And also something about the way in which we are within our own heads and our own body,
Yeah.
and the way in which, we spend our downtime when we do maybe get downtime.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the conversation has changed a lot over the last few years. I was thinking back to like the beginning of the pandemic. It felt like hustle culture was like right up in my face. And I feel like there's been a shift. But yeah, I'm just thinking about certain female entrepreneurs in particular that I follow. And that phrase that's, I think, has come up a few times and a few people have been criticized for about we all have the same 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
And it just feels so simple on the surface, but actually it's a lot more complicated than that. I suppose there is that balance, isn't there, of like, what are the specific challenges that you have? So you might have less capacity, you might have more responsibility than somebody else. So it's not a fair comparison. And also in your situation, how can you work with the ideas of slow living and intentional living to support yourself? I think it almost feels like, oh, it's just reminded me of one of my favorite quotes, which is about meditating. But it goes, sit every day for 20 minutes unless you're busy, in which case sit for an hour.
Oh, I've not heard that. I love that.
Yeah, I really love that one. I don't live up to it, I don't think, but yeah.
Yeah. But it's sometimes genuine and sometimes an excuse of, oh, I've got no time.
Yeah.
And sometimes we do genuinely have limited time. But I think a good amount of the time it's how we're prioritizing the way in which we're using that time. And I think rest or dedicating time to hobbies or even giving time to family and friends can move lower down the pecking order in terms of where you're prioritizing that time.
Yeah. And I think if you're someone that's been through burnout, I'm kind of holding myself as I say this. So, what I was originally going to say is if you're someone who's been through burnout, then you know how important it is to prioritize yourself and to live in a way that means that you don't end up going into burnout again. The reason that I'm hesitating with that is I know I have been round that ring so many times and get a bit of burnout amnesia or something and think that I can do it all or this time will be different. And it never is. So yeah, I just wanted to catch myself on that one. But I think, I think when you have been through burnout and you know that you can't just push through, maybe it takes several goes around to really get it. But sometimes you have to stop. Like we don't have infinite capacity, no matter what our responsibilities are. There is a point where you have to stop or accept help or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there definitely is. And I also would love to say learned the lessons from previous burnout, but nope. Around and around we go. No, I have learned a lot of lessons that I'm better at, but of course not all, and there are still many to learn. Some of it is just about not willing to accept. I think, gosh, in a very, very early podcast episode, I think Too Tired for Life, was it, where you was just like, nope, nope,
Yeah.
don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I was like, it's going to be different this time. And you were like, no, it's not. And it wasn't any different. I was exhausted after that. I went through a huge amount of change in a short space of time. And so again, I'm back to thinking about pacing myself. And even just this week. So I've been updating my website this week. And I just get into like the flow of it and I get so excited and I just feel like I have endless energy. But I've banned myself from working on Wednesdays at all. So I used to just not see clients on Wednesdays, but I've banned myself from doing anything. And I woke up and I was like, oh, I could just tweet. And I'm like, no, you have to rest because you have to have enough energy for Thursday and Friday. So, but it's hard. It's really hard when you get into the flow of something to stop.
Yeah, especially if it's something that is a bit creative or maybe you're excited about doing. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's okay to do that, but other times it still ends up being work, isn't it? And you're not giving yourself that break.
Yeah.
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 So when I think about rushing through life, to me, there's nothing more evident about the way in which we tend to move through life when we're driving and noticing the pace through which people drive. So one of the things that winds me up so much is when you're at traffic lights and you come to a stop and I'm stopped, but the car next to me is like inching forward, on up, down with their clutch, getting closer and closer until it reaches the point where they get over the line and then they just have to stop their car because the lights haven't changed yet. It's like you can't even just be still and just stop your car to just have enough patience to wait for the lights to change. Edging forwards is literally not going to get you anywhere. You know how we all have those things that just instantly make us so angry? That is one of mine. It winds me up so much. But it's like we're moving so fast and want to get to our destination so quick that you can't even just actually just stop at the lights.
Mm.
So there's so much about other car users that really winds me up. Just the lack of patience, I think. It just feels like everybody is always in a rush and their destination is more important than your destination, rather than just chill out. Just chill out.
I'm just thinking about my driving instructor when people would overtake me when I was on my lessons. He'd just go in a really deadpan tone, like, "Oh, well done, you're one car ahead."
Yes. Yeah.
Which used to make me laugh. But also, I'm kind of sat with I get this in restaurants and I'm the impatient one. Like when I finish my dinner, I'm like, come on, I want to pay. Like, take the plates away. I don't like having the plates in front of me when I've finished eating. I'm like, oh, come on. And why is it taking so long? And yeah, I can't just sit there and enjoy it. I'm like, next thing, next thing, next thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we will all have those things where we experience impatience. And I'm certainly not professing to be some sort of patience saint. But it's just about the rush, the need to be on to the next thing, to get to the next place.
Yeah.
And it means we can't stop to smell the roses. I think you're missing life. If you rush through life, you're missing life.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wholeheartedly agree with it and know how difficult it is to stay out of the pull to rush, rush, rush. But, when it feels like everybody else around you is on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, it can be really hard to slow down and can feel like you're going to miss out on things.
Yeah. And just slowing down it's like how we cook or order in our favorite food and then you blink and it's gone and you've just gone rush, rush, spoonful, spoonful. And then, it's suddenly gone and you forgot to enjoy it. It's how many things do we experience from eating to going somewhere, watching something, that we just rush through it so much that we've forgotten to actually take the time to enjoy what it is that we've done.
Yeah. Yeah, it often feels like there's different parts of me. So there's definitely part of me that wants to slow down and smell the roses. And, that just feels like so wonderful. And like, why would you not want to do that? But there is also another part of me, and I notice this with a lot of neurodivergent people that I work with, that I love the way that I work when I'm kind of in the flow and I can get so much stuff done. And usually that comes after a period of not being able to do a lot. So the joy and the relief of getting loads of stuff done. But then I can get caught in this feeling of like I can stay up there forever. I can just, I can work at this really intense, productive pace indefinitely. And letting go of that can be quite difficult. That can be it's still a challenge for me. And I know it's a challenge, like I say, for lots of people that I work with. And also I think keeping yourself busy can be a survival strategy as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it would be good to talk about why we might end up in situations where we're just keeping ourselves really busy all the time. And I believe that there's a difference between trying to not rush through life so much. You can still have periods of busyness. It's not necessarily a case of it being all or nothing, where you're like going through life slow like the tortoise or rushing through life like the hare. Although I'm sure the tortoise wins in the end in that fable. But it doesn't have to be like exclusively one or the other. There's a lot about slow and intentional living. That doesn't then mean you can't have periods of busyness or be productive or have success. It's just more the way in which we approach those things, the speed at which we approach those things, and how much of that we're doing on autopilot without even thinking about it, rather than intentionally having periods of intense focus and busyness and making sure we have rest afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. I get, well, that is the point of the fable, isn't it? Of the tortoise and the hare. That is the whole point, and feels good to have a reminder of that. That, yeah, if you're a hare, if you want to be a hare, like there's nothing wrong with being a hare and taking, I feel like I'm going against what the fable says now because he has a nap under a tree, doesn't he? But going fast for periods, you're going to need periods of downtime for it to be sustainable. And that's okay. And it's normal. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It doesn't
Mm.
mean that you're doing anything wrong, that you're lazy, that you're incapable, any of those things that can come up. It's just necessary
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and uncomfortable. This is the thing, isn't it? What is it like to actually stop? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah. Well, perhaps then we can look at, okay, so when does busyness become a coping strategy? Why is it so uncomfortable for people to learn how to slow down?
Yeah. I think a lot of people's self-worth is tied up in doing, isn't it? It's tied up in doing and being productive. And yeah, it certainly was for me, from being a small child, my worth was tied up in being the clever one, which was a path to becoming the successful one in a high-flying job. So to step outside of that path, for me, it feels possible, normal even now. But I know that for loads of people, it doesn't. It feels completely alien.
Hmm.
And if your self-worth is entirely tied up in what you do, then if you're not doing, you're faced with some uncomfortable questions.
Yeah. What you're speaking to there is our early childhood experiences and where we may have been conditioned to be productive, keep going on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And whether that has come from parents, whether that's come from messages we've received that we've internalized, or wider society, and all of them. Yeah, our worth inherently can get tied to that as well. And especially if that has been then mirrored by our caregivers as well. If we never saw our caregivers slowing down, taking a moment to rest or really savor or enjoy something, then we're not going to think it's okay to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just something about that stillness when you do stop, that anything that you've been avoiding is then going to come in and fill that space. And that can be really uncomfortable too.
Busyness can be used a lot to avoid difficult emotions, also just to avoid our own heads, especially if we have very busy heads, if we struggle with rumination, if we struggle with intrusive thoughts, if we have a busy brain that just never turns off. Sometimes we can end up using keeping busy as, the ultimate distraction from our own head.
Yeah, I think there's lots of places that we can pick up messages about whether it's even okay to rest at all. And I think because of my work, my instant go-to is to think about the impact that our parents had on us. But I think it is wider than that. I think schools play into that a lot at the moment. I feel like there's a lot of pressure from schools, but just wider society, just the way that society is structured, that it values success and productivity. And then I'm thinking about cultures as well, and what do our cultures say about slowing down and resting, and is that okay or not? Thinking about sayings like, is it like the devil makes work for idle thumbs, and things like that. But that can have a really big impact. But something else that I see a lot of that is related to our parents is around feeling like we need to impress our parents or gain approval from them. If
Mhm.
they haven't been parents that show love very easily, or affection, or you feel like you have to earn their love, then slowing down and stepping away from performing can be really, really difficult, because then it's
Mm.
not just about what work am I doing. Actually, it's getting tangled up in something really, really uncomfortable, which is, we're really heading into then, am I lovable? Am I likable? Am I, yeah, worthy as a person at all?
Yeah, yeah. If I'm not doing, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I think about parents, I'm considering the generational aspect as well. And obviously, that's going to depend on the generation that people's parents are. But when I think about, the boomer generation, there was really strong messaging about, as you mentioned, like hard work ethic, and the hard work ethic as being something that you are like proud of. That is a good thing. People would, start work at a relatively young age and for a lot of the time stay in the same company for their entire lives. And it was also seen as a good thing to be like really fiercely loyal to the company or organization that you worked for and go that extra mile or stay late for the company, never be off sick. I hear a lot of older generations talk about that again as a real pride point. Never did I have a day off sick. So again, if we've been raised by generations with this idea that hard work ethic and putting your work or organizational needs above your own as a good thing, a good thing to be self-sacrificing. Yeah, those messages are kind of put onto us as well. And interestingly, I think from a very young age, I've actually rebelled against that and not got on board that train. But it doesn't mean that it's not there. And it definitely is there for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I hear you saying that you rebel against that, and yet I know that you also work extremely hard a lot of the time. And the same with me, as well. So what came to mind when you were talking is about the balance of that. Like I feel like in the past, like you could work hard and you were essentially guaranteed a job for life, and you could buy a house and live a comfortable life. Whereas now, does hard work pay seems to be a question that comes up quite a bit in the media. And I think that's really important. There does have to be a balance. So I think it's important that we're questioning it. I see a lot about Gen Z. Oh, I can't even think of the term that they use now, but it's like working to rule. Like, they work to the terms of their contract, but it's written as if that's a bad thing. And I'm like, how is that a
Mhm.
bad thing? Like they're
Yeah.
doing the job that they've been paid to do. They're not giving big corporations free labor. Good for them.
Yes. No. Yeah. I absolutely agree. Yeah. And in relation to, I know a lot of the busyness or where I have worked hard. For me, that's all been about like self worth, and that coming from my own internalized messaging and feeling like, oh, if I just get here or if I just get here, then I'll matter, then I'll be of worth, obviously on an unconscious level. But when it comes to rejecting those wider work based cultural norms, I always used to remember telling my mom to call in sick, you're not very well. And it was absolutely, it's absolutely not. Whereas, yeah, if I'm sick, I'm not going to work.
What came up for me as you were saying that is, yeah, again, it's about staff welfare and how companies do or rather don't invest in that. So before I was a therapist, I used to work in a call center, so talking all day long. And there were several periods where I would get tonsillitis because I would get it fairly frequently. And even though I had tonsillitis and I had a fever and I couldn't talk and I had kids, I was a single parent, so I needed the money to pay my rent. Work wouldn't pay me sick pay. I had to go into work and I would just be sat at my desk, like with my head on my desk,
Hmm.
like because they'd pay me if I went in. Like, who did that benefit at
Yeah.
all? That didn't benefit anybody. So yeah, I think there are some really difficult kind of systemic things, and I think it almost feels like the system runs in quite a cynical way. That if you look after people, that if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile of strategy. Whereas I know there are other companies out there that really do invest in their staff, and I'm sure see good return. I think most people do want to work hard. Most people do want to be productive and take pride in that.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I could make this whole episode about this because it's something that I so passionately believe in. But research over and over again shows the more you care about the well being of your staff, actually, the better productive that they are and more, yeah, loyal, more likely to stay. I mean, there's loads of benefits and we all know this. And yet, still, I don't understand how that's not at the forefront. Obviously, some businesses now do. But yeah, absolutely baffles me. But talking about the various reasons that somebody might keep themselves really busy or find themselves rushing through life, we've spoken a bit about slow living, haven't we? And I'm just wondering, what does slow living mean to you?
Oh, good question. So the first thing that comes into my mind is like how I structure my working life. And again, really aware of privilege when I'm talking about this. And I know that lots of other people, I can only do this because I'm self employed, but I take a week off every 6 to 8 weeks. I don't work on Wednesdays, as I said before. So structuring my week in a way that means that the pace of it works for me. And there's been lots of trial and error in that. I used to work evenings a lot, do not work evenings anymore. I feel like it's very much tied up with values for me. It's about how am I living my values? Because if I'm rushing through life, I can't really live my values. And so, like, for one example, I want to be a calm and patient mum. That's really important to me. Don't always achieve it, but it is really important to me. So, making sure that I structure my life in a way that means that I am able to be calm and patient around my children. For me, slow living brings up very cozy images in my head. So, like, going back to the episodes that we did in the autumn, I'm thinking about, oh, how did we word it? It was like, what would you put in your something basket we did? And that was like a nice little thing. But it's things like blankets, candles, like your favorite book, all things like that. Yeah, I feel like I've babbled a lot and not quite said what I want to say. I've got
Mm.
lots of thoughts. Yeah, how is it for you?
Yeah, well, it's funny when I think of slow living because for a lot of my life, I've been described as slow. What I mean by that is I've always been the last at the dinner table, the last to finish my hot drink, the slowest walker on the walk, the last to get ready. As a kid, my mum would say, I dilly dally. I would say, I'm just taking my time. But yeah, to me, it's taking your time. It's not moving or not doing anything. It's going through life, doing tasks, getting things done, but taking your time,
Mm.
taking the time to savor, taking the time to enjoy, to be really present in the moment, pay attention, to reflect, to decompress, to rest. That can take so many different shapes and forms, but it's taking your time with what it is that you're doing.
Mm.
And you're less likely to make mistakes. You're less likely to have accidents. And I think you're more likely to be able to be connected with yourself and other people and the wider world around you. And of course, it's not always feasibly possible to take our time. There are times when things are going on where we need to rush and things need to happen quickly. But I equate rushing and high busyness with stress. Stress, which equals impact on mental health and the physical body, which we know literally shortens your lifespan. So, some of this stuff to me is about my values and is about individual choice, about how we live our life. And I'm also a strong believer that the slowing down can be helpful for anybody in terms of managing our overall health and well-being.
Yeah. You just described that so beautifully. Like I feel like as you were
Thanks.
talking, I could feel myself relaxing more and more and more. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, taking your time, being present, it just feels so important to me now. It feels like going back to the episode about philosophy, like what the point of life is. It's definitely not racing through it like you're trying to
Yeah.
get some end point because the end point is death.
Yeah. I like the way you said that then. Death.
People don't want to acknowledge it, do they? Like, where are you rushing to? Where are you hoping to get to?
Yeah.
Yeah, for lots of people that I work with, it just goes back to parents. It just goes back to if I finally pull this off, I'll be worthy. I'll get the love that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
finally be good enough.
Yeah. That is a really big part of it. And I also want to recognize, I mean, this speaks a little bit to something that you said earlier, but it's hard to be an adult. That's all that really needs to say.
Yeah.
But I especially think it's hard being an adult now. And I was actually having this conversation with my granddad, who I call my papa. I took him out for lunch last week and we was having just a conversation about life. I mean, we both get into deep conversations every time we talk and we're quite similar aligned in our views and values. And I was asking him what his perspective is on life today because he was born during the war and then he grew up in post-war Britain. And sometimes I have this notion in my head that it's way harder today than what it used to be in the past. And I kind of wanted to, challenge that notion by asking him, who, he has lived through all these different time periods, actually, what is your perception on life today? And it was a really interesting conversation, and we spoke a lot how there are lots of difficulties, of course. But he mirrored what I said. He said, this doesn't even come close to what life is like now, like the busyness, the amount that people rush, the amount that people have so much on and don't have time for one another, that the isolation, the lack of community, the lack of support that you would, get on your street, in your village. And so being able to hear that mirrored back through his perspective as well was just really helpful. Also really interesting that life today is really difficult. We're expected to handle and hold an awful lot on your own. And there is more and more to keep track of. And that makes me think how difficult it is. It's hard to not have to rush. Last week I was off and I was like, right, I'm going to get some life admin tasks done. There's loads still left to do because you just end up with this huge pile of all this absolute just rubbish of stuff that you've got to do and get sorted out as an adult. So how can you not then rush when you want to get this stuff ticked off your list?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just making me think about my digital detox that I did and how much space it felt like there was in my life. I mean, there was literally, because I went away by myself. So I didn't have to think about my husband. I didn't have to think about my children. I wasn't doing any of my work for my master's. I wasn't working with clients. So there was a lot taken off my plate other than just the digital side. But there was something else to it as well. Yeah, just not having that constant bombardment of everything that's going on in the world all the time.
Yeah.
And I've seen a few people starting to do 90s challenges where they live as if it's the 90s.
Oh, I've not
and I'm
seen that.
Yeah, I'm really drawn to that idea. I might try it out when I next have a week off. But yeah, I haven't managed to digital detox even for a single day since I did that challenge. Yeah, which just goes to how easy it is to get suckered into everything that feels urgent all of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Living in a state of chronic urgency of just stuff that's, got to get done and it's got to get done now. And I think sometimes we can trick ourselves. And I know this is certainly something I've seen other people in my life do. But, there's also this perception, I guess, another popular phrase, don't put off tomorrow what you can do today. That there's this notion that if you can hurry up and get all of this stuff done, then tomorrow will be free. But tomorrow is never free.
No.
The stuff never ends.
Yeah.
That we fall under this illusion that if we can just reach a point where most of the stuff is ticked off, then I can have some free time. That day never comes. There's always going to be more stuff, more things around the corner, things that go wrong, things you're going to have to deal with, things that happen with your family. I would agree. I would say, no, do put off tomorrow. No, wait, is that right?
No.
Oh, no.
Do put off the things.
Yeah. Wait, I'm so confused now. How would the saying be the other way around?
It would be, it doesn't quite go so easily, does it? Because I guess it would be something along the lines of put off some things till tomorrow, even though you could do them today.
Yeah,
Something
there we
like
go.
that.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're about there. Let's coin that as a new phrase.
It freaks me out, though, the idea that just coming back to death again, sorry. The idea that when I die, I will still have things on my to-do list that are not ticked off. Oh, no, I don't like that. It makes me feel all weird in my bones.
I see what you mean, actually. Yeah, you will die with things still left on your to-do list.
Yeah, I want them nicely tied up. That's
nicely
it.
tied up life in a ribbon. And then you can go on your jolly way.
Exactly. Yeah. Which I think this feels like a good point to bring in the idea of, so challenging the concept of laziness as a legitimate thing. This has been life-changing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were parts of me that really thought that I was lazy. And then I came across an article, which I think is now a book. I think the original article was by Devon Price.
Yeah.
About laziness. Just, it's never laziness. There's always something else going
Yeah.
on. And it's really important to figure out what those things that are going on are, because otherwise you're just criticizing yourself for something. And actually, there's a struggle going on that's not being addressed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important. Maybe I'll see if I can find the article and put it in the show notes because it is, yeah, a brilliant
Yeah,
article.
yeah. I've read the article, but I haven't read the book. But I know the premise is basically there's no such thing as laziness. And I think lazy is really a word that suits our ultra capitalistic society
Yeah.
and has done an excellent job. I mean, the amount of people that say, I know I'm being lazy, but I feel really lazy all the time, all the time. It's so ingrained. It's so ingrained. And like you, straight away, I'm just thinking it's not laziness.
No, and
It's
I'm
really
just
not.
catching the difference between like lazy being such a negative word and relaxation being a positive word. So I'm thinking about, okay, if we really want to argue that laziness does exist, the only way it can exist is if it's a choice. And if you can stop being lazy as soon as you want to stop being lazy, that it's a choice. But that's just relaxation. That's just choosing to relax. That's not being lazy. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's because people believe if there's still things on their to do list and they don't do it, then they're being lazy because they should be using the time to do all of this stuff that's waiting. But as we've just established, there is always stuff waiting.
Yeah.
So that means your only choices then are to either just be lazy or be constantly nonstop doing. And
Yeah.
that doesn't work.
No. And it's bringing in a little bit, I think we touched on this in a recent episode about people that are busy all the time and are then like a bit of a martyr about it. Oh,
Mm.
I really don't like that. I'm sure I probably do it myself sometimes, but it makes me so uncomfortable. So I actively try not to fall into that way of being, that if I'm doing something, I really take responsibility for what I'm choosing to do.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like it's important to say sometimes when we have had a really productive day and we've ticked a bunch of that stuff off, like, of course, that feels good because we've ticked a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff off.
Yeah.
Well, not only from the way in which just that works on the neurotransmitters in our brain, of course, the biochemistry of it all. But of course, if we've got rid of things on our list to do, that's going to feel great. But I think that then creates the illusion that, oh, well, because that made me feel good,
Yeah.
that's what my everyday should look like. And then I will keep feeling good,
Yeah.
which of course is not how it works.
No, and it just in my head, it just feels like a hamster wheel of like, great, you've ticked off those things, but you haven't seen those 10 other things that are coming around the corner that are about to be added to your list. Yeah, and just the endlessness of it. And I think it does have to be an active choice to move out of it, to choose something different and to live differently. And I think for a lot of people, it comes from necessity.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from reaching a point where you have to recognize that the way that you're living isn't working. Yeah. I kind of want to be a bit preachy and say, like, but you don't have to wait until you get to that point. But I also know that no one's going to listen to that.
They might.
They
But I'm
won't.
also very conscious of people listening and being like, and saying, oh, but, I'm a single parent, or as you said before, I have to hold down 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And really do understand that not everybody has the luxury of tomorrow just deciding to not do certain things on their list that actually are important and a priority and maybe need to get done. But there are moments still in time where we can recognize things that we're doing that we could slow down on. And that's because it's so automatic. If we're used to rushing our dinner, then the moment we sit down, it's probably automatic that we start just shoveling that food in.
Yeah.
And actually, what we can do when we've got time is we can take notice and
Yeah.
intentionally slow that down.
Yeah.
Similar with a walk. Sometimes it's nice to have a fast walk, for fitness and for exercise, but it's also can be nice to slow down and have a gentle walk and really just take note of just a walk for a walk's sake
Yeah.
and be present and take note of what's around you.
Yeah.
And the same can be true with your children and taking them to the park, how often are you looking at your watch thinking, okay, when can I get them home so that I can do the cleaning and I can do the cooking? And some of the time, not always, but some of the time, actually just being able to just be at the park with your kids.
Yeah. And it is tough. And I hate the park. I don't know what it is about play parks, but yeah, like as soon as we start at the park, my body is like tensing up, like when can we leave? I don't know if I think maybe it's probably the noise,
Yeah.
just thinking about it now, it's probably just the noise. But yeah, just separate from the park thing, just finding any opportunity to slow down and connect and be curious and ask children questions. And yeah, I've been doing it a lot more recently, and just really just enjoying building that relationship with them that you can't do when you're constantly rushing from
Yeah.
one thing to the next. And again, there's something about, yeah, what life are you trying to build here? Where are you trying to get to? Yeah, there's something about, I don't think I can put it together in a cohesive way, but there's something about I've got the word means and end in my head. What's the saying?
Means to an end.
There's something like a means to an end, but then you can turn it round and it's something else. Like you can't separate the way that you get there from how you're going to feel like when you get there.
Yeah, well, what came up for me when you were talking about is how often that we say, once I've done this, then I can do this.
Yeah.
Or this idea of once I have these things, then I can live my life, then I can be happy, then I can travel, then I can do this, then I can do that. And it feels like we're always trying to get to this future version of our life
Yeah.
and forget or don't fully then be present enough to recognize like we're already in our life. This
Yeah.
is it. This is life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not to say we can't have goals and ambitions, but I just think so often we end up being focused on what this future version of us can have and what they're going to be like,
Yeah.
and forget to take note of this is it. Like you're in it. This
Yeah.
is life now. And
Yeah.
I'm so conscious of I've not wanted any of the things that I've said to come across like it's blaming the individual for their busyness or for not being able to stop or slow down, because that's absolutely not my intention. I think the reason that this is so hard is because it's systemic. It's the way society is built. But that's why it's called intentional living,
Yeah.
because without society having a huge change to make these things easier for us, there is no choice but for us to try to be intentional about where we can create moments like this for ourselves. And some people will have more privilege and more ability to have a slower life in general, but we can also still create moments or more slower moments for ourselves, I think.
Yeah. And leading on from that, it also makes me think about what I've had to let go in order to live intentionally or slowly. And there's another version of me, so in another universe somewhere, where I did become the high flying lawyer that my family wanted me to be. There are parts of that I miss if I'm watching legal dramas, or if I see lawyers in the news, or just walking around a city. There's like a pang of like, oh, that was supposed to be me with the shiny wardrobe and looking all professional and important. There is a pang of having missed out on something. And yet I purposely chose not to do that. I purposely chose a different path. That wasn't what I wanted. What was important for me was to become a mum and be present and enjoy life. And, losing my dad when he was 61 was another reminder of, we're not promised a long life. Anything can happen, and we have to live for now. Like we have to live for today. Actually, a group that I'm in has a day called Life's Too Short Day, which was set up in memory of a member's husband who died very young. And so on that day, we'd all do like something that might seem a bit frivolous, but like using, anything that you're saving for best, we'd use them on that day. And now I don't save anything for best. Like every single day we have is a privilege. And I feel like I've gone right off. Why am I talking about death again? I feel like I'm on the brain today.
I might have to rename today's episode title.
Oh, too obsessed with death. What we're talking about. Yeah, so there still are. I'm never going to be one of those shiny Instagram mums. It's just not going to happen. I'm never going to have a tidy house. My house isn't the most beautifully decorated. There are lots of choices that you have to make. And for me, the choice I try and make over and over again is connection, is meaning, is joy. Joy has become a massive thing for me, and I don't necessarily mean like big ecstatic over the top joy, but actually, small joys. And just to bring it back to death again,
Oh my God.
I was even thinking about when my dad died, and me and my sister sat either side of his hospital bed, and he died, and we were able to laugh, and it was so nice. Like, it was so sad. It was so sad and painful, and also there was joy there too. And yeah, there's so many ways to like, when I think about joys, the first thing that pops into my head is cheap flowers that cost
Yeah.
like £3 from Sainsbury's or something, and then they last a whole week. And that's,
Mhm.
just a tiny little joyful thing. Yeah. I think for me, actually, slow living, intentional living is about repeatedly giving me and the people that I care about the message that I matter, that they matter to me. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, and it was really nice listening to how even in deep loss and sadness that there was lightness
Yeah.
and kind of joy to be found.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was so interesting listening to you talk about it from that perspective. I think what I'm sitting with is the thing that's helped me the most is try to care less about judgments from other people. So years ago, when I changed from working 5 days to 4 days, and people were like, well, why? It's not like you've got children that you have to be off for. Oh, well, why do you only work 4 days? Like, what? Well, why not? Why the hell not? So, yeah, so caring less, not feeling like I have to be at every event. I love taking FOMO, fear of missing out, and taking it into like JOMO, like joy of missing out. I love just taking time to be at home by yourself. I like the word potter, like when you potter around the house. I feel like that in and of itself sounds like slow living. I just pottered about the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not much
Mm.
stuff gets done, but I like to potter.
Yeah.
So, not caring so much about living your life in the way that other people might expect you to. I could be on the way home from somewhere and my dad might say, oh, why don't you pop in for a drink on your way back? It's like, I never want to pop in anywhere. Pop in again to me, like that feels like a rush. I don't want to just pop anywhere. If I'm going to be somewhere, I'm going to
Mm.
choose to be somewhere.
Yeah. You're not interested in a flying visit.
Yes. Yeah. No, I don't want a flying visit. Yeah. I want to see you intentionally. Yeah. Trying to not get caught up in the way other people live their life and therefore expect you to live your life when you want to choose to operate differently.
Yeah. Thinking about how we move out of that old way of living and becoming more intentional. I'm going to bring it back to death for, I think, the fifth time this episode. And I'm fairly sure I've talked about this before on the podcast. But again, the thing that really focuses my mind is the deathbed question, which is, when you're lying on your deathbed, what do you want to be able to say about your life? Yeah, just instantly focuses the mind. I think it could be really uncomfortable, but I think it's really important. And thinking about that also made me think about what I read about death anxiety being a sign that you're not living your life in the way that you want to be living it. I think that's really important. But I've got a quote popped into my head while I was thinking about this episode. It's one of my absolute favorite quotes of all time, which is about the discomfort that comes up when we try and change things and it can feel like we're doing something wrong. So it's by Jeanette Winterson, and she says, when we make a change, it's so easy to interpret our unsettledness as unhappiness and our unhappiness as the result of having made the wrong decision. Our mental and emotional states fluctuate madly when we make big changes in our lives. And some days we could tightrope across Manhattan, and the other days we are too weary to clean our teeth. This is normal. This is natural. This is change. And I just thought, oh, it just feels like such a nice fit to having this episode and to bring the episode to a close that acknowledges that shifting to intentional living can be really uncomfortable. It can bring some really challenging questions, and they're questions worth answering because we only get one life. And if you're not being intentional about it, then yeah, you may well end up on your deathbed wishing you'd done something different.
I had a
Yeah.
ripple of goosebumps pass over my skin when you got to the end of that quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it is really true. I think too often we're quick to judge what our emotional state might mean and panic and worry about that. But changing the way we live our life is really difficult and it is really scary. And I think if we do feel passionate about trying to slow things down and live more intentionally, then we are likely also going to have to confront the reasons that we might have been doing that in the first place. Whether that's part of our conditioning and it might be taking a long time to unlearn something, or whether we're then left to confront what we've been running from with our busyness, then that may well be there waiting for us. So it's not that any of this is easy. But I'm going to come back to that word that we like to use on this podcast, like radical again. It feels like a radical kind of 2 fingers up to the way society wants us to be. Yeah, in a way that kind of suits society and doesn't necessarily suit ourselves. Reclaim those years of your life that you might lose to stress by rushing, and what that might give you. I'm a big believer in it having such positive benefits. And actually, I say I'm a big believer. I think research evidences this anyway, through like mindfulness and meditation and anything that's about slowing down our way of being and our processes and our thoughts and what we do always shows the positive effects on our physical and mental well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we're back to the tortoise and the hare again. And just
Yeah.
thinking about actually, if you do slow down, you might even be more productive.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might even be more productive.
Yeah, and just to briefly re-mention the newsletter that I'm launching, the freebie that comes with it is about the framework that I have developed called the Pause Framework, which gets you started at looking at how to slow things down and live more intentionally. So just if anyone's interested, you can go to my website, sign up to the newsletter, and yeah, grab that freebie if you're interested.
Is it ready now? Is it live?
No, but it should be at any moment now.
Okay. Oh, that's really exciting. That's really exciting. I've been waiting in the background for like, oh, when's it going to be?
Maybe by the time this is out, it will.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're someone who's exhausted by the pace of your own life, who secretly fantasizes about a simpler, quieter existence, maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's wisdom.
And maybe you're not too slow. Maybe the world is just moving too fast. And maybe you get to decide which pace is actually yours.
You don't have to earn your rest. You don't have to justify your quiet. You're allowed to choose a life that feels like yours, even if it doesn't look impressive from the outside.
Next time, we're talking about being too hard on yourself to enjoy anything. When you've worked so hard to get somewhere and then you get there and feel nothing. Or worse, immediately start on the next thing. It's the perfectionism episode, the overachieving episode, the why does nothing ever feel like enough episode.
But for now, we'll leave you with this. If no one was watching and nothing counted as productive, how would you spend your time tomorrow? That's all from us today. If this episode made you feel a bit less alone, the best way to help us reach more people is to subscribe, rate the podcast, and follow Too Much Apparently on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Those simple clicks help other sensitive humans find us when they need it most. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.